From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, everyone. Good morning. It's Thursday, May 6th, 2021. We're past May the 4th. We're past Cinco de Mayo. We are on the last day of this week. Good morning to Matt, who's joining us as usual. Thanks so much for tuning in, Matt. I hope you guys are ready. We have a loaded show today, a ton of stuff going on, a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of updates, and some privacy stuff. It's also World Password Day today. So what is your password? Comment in the comments. Let me know your favorite password that you use. And if you're at it, just put the email address and I don't know, maybe, your credit card information, help me out. So with that being said, we've got a Qualcomm vulnerability that's impacting nearly 40% of all mobile phone devices. Peloton is in a world of problems with a leaky API, privacy issues, and now a death of a toddler. We'll see how all that relates to cyber in just a few moments. A new Spectre flaw in Intel and AMD processors. Just when we thought Spectre was over, it rears its ugly head back up again. DoD expands vulnerability disclosure and states push back against the use of facial recognition. I talk a lot about biometrics. This one is very interesting as well because it has a lot to do with privacy. For those tuning in live, we're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in live. We are here Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure to subscribe and follow the CyberHub podcast social media pages on your favorite social media platforms. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. Even if you're watching us live, please go subscribe to the CyberHub podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you enjoy getting your podcasts, and subscribe there as well. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at KnowBe4, Wistic, and Ativo Networks. So make sure to give them a shout out, and we'll get this so ready to go. David says, I'm so proud of my daughter. She just said, no, don't do it. It's a scam. Yep, that is how we teach them young. We teach them early, and here we go, folks. My normal sip of coffee. I haven't done dishes. I'll be honest. It's been 4 crazy days. I didn't want to use a dirty coffee mug because then you guys would see that it's dirty, and you'd think that I'm not hygienic. So my coffee is right in this beautiful little styrofoam that's going to go into the recycle bin after this. Just so you know, I'm very sustainable. Everything goes into the recycle bin in my house that's recyclable. So cheers. All right, let's go into Qualcomm's vulnerability that's impacting nearly 40% of all mobile phone devices. This is a high severity security vulnerability that's found in Qualcomm's MSM, that's mobile station modem chips, including the latest 5G capable versions that could enable attackers to access mobile phone user text messages, call history, and even listen in on the conversations. The MSM is a series of 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G capable systems on chips used in roughly 40% of mobile phones by multiple vendors, including Samsung, Google, LG, OnePlus, and Xiaomi. Here's the thing. You know what's not on here? Apple. The CVE 2020-11292, and it does take control of the modem and can dynamically patch it from the application processors. Attackers have to abuse the heap overflow weakness in the Qualcomm MSM interface that's used by the company's cellular processors to interface with the software stack, and that's how they actually gain access to it. Malicious apps could also use the vulnerability to hide their activity under cover of the modem chip itself, effectively making themselves invisible to security features used by Android to detect malicious activity. We ultimately proved a dangerous vulnerability did, in fact, exist in these chips, according to the researchers that did the work here. To protect themselves against the malware exploiting this or similar security bugs, the company advises users to update their devices to the latest release OS versions that usually come with security updates. But this is a intertwined vulnerability, folks. This isn't something that's been around for it's not new, and it's predominantly on Android devices, meaning you have to look at this and say, threat actors know this does exist on the Qualcomm. So if you're on an Android device, if you're using a Samsung, LG, any of those devices, and you do have a Qualcomm MSM chip in your device, you could download through the Android store an app through Google Play, download an app, and that app be malicious and hide and take advantage of this and read your text messages, listen in on your calls, do all kinds of stuff. This is fairly severe. Qualcomm's fixed these in the past, but we'll see how they deal with this. David says, good morning. LinkedIn user, I'm going to say this is either Dave or John. I don't know who that is. But Matt also said that Apple, he answered correctly, Matt. Bonus points for you, buddy. Apple's not on there because Apple uses their own chips, which also heightens their security. We had a debate last night on the Tech Town Square over Apple. We went all over the place. But really, what I should have closed with is you pay 30% as an app provider to be in the Apple App Store, because guess what? We don't see Apple on these vulnerability disclosures like we see Android. Every single day, I see something. Every single day. Like, even if I ever thought of switching to Android at this point, why would I? So let's move on to the next story. Peloton. Oh, Peloton. Peloton's Leaky API spilled riders' private data. And on top of the privacy spill, Peloton is also now recalling all treadmills after the equipment was linked to over 70 injuries and the death of a child. The API was leaking riders' private data. It ignored a vulnerability disclosure from a penetration testing company, and it partially fixed the hole, but didn't get around to telling the researcher until some of that stuff. So just overall bad security behavior by Peloton. The more horrific news is that they've now recalled all of this stuff. They've actually ignored Consumer Product and Safety Commission requests for months in asking them to pull their equipment, telling people to stay off the Peloton treadmills. If you have a Peloton, please keep this in mind. Just so you folks know, the President of the United States uses a Peloton. I don't know if he was allowed to bring one into the White House. It's definitely covered here in the story as well. But the list of exposed private details, if you do use a Peloton, is user IDs, instructor IDs, group membership, location, workout stats, gender, and age, and if they are in a studio or not. So not very groundbreaking information. Nonetheless, it's private information, and you have a right to it. So very interesting. This kind of goes to the idea that security is a cultural issue beyond anything else within an organization. And you can tell here that it's not only security, but also safety was almost put on the back burner with Peloton. I'll be staying away from those for a little bit, see how they react to this and what kind of transparency they provide to earn the trust of consumers and investors alike. We'll move to our next story, and one that I think if you're in security and you've been in security, we've all heard Spectre. Well, in January of 2018, Spectre came around, and now it's back. New Spectre Flaws are now available in Intel and AMD CPUs, and they affect billions of devices. And on this one, you will see Apple on the list because Apple does use AMD and Intel processors in their devices. No one's immune at this point, okay? So Spectre, which is a class of critical vulnerabilities impacting modern processors, was publicly revealed. And now a team of academics from the University of Virginia and the University of California, San Diego, have discovered a new line of attack that bypasses all current Spectre protections built into the chips, potentially putting almost every system, desktop, laptop, cloud servers, and smartphones, once again at risk like they were nearly 3 years ago, folks. The disclosure of Spectre and Meltdown opened a floodgates of sorts with with endless variants of the attacks coming in light in the intervening years, even as chip makers like Intel, ARM, and AMD have continually scrambled to incorporate defenses to alleviate the vulnerabilities that permit malicious code to read passwords, encryption keys, and other valuable information directly from the computer's kernel memory. This is significant. This is a timing side channel attack at its core. Spectre breaks the isolation between different applications and takes advantage of optimization method called speculative execution in CPU hardware implementations to trick programs into accessing arbitrary locations in memory and thus leak their secrets. The new attack method exploits what's called a micro operation or micro ops cache, an on-chip component that decomposes machine instructions into simpler commands and speeds up computing as a side channel to divulge secret information. Micro-op caches have been built into Intel-based machines manufactured since 2001. Intel's suggested defenses against Spectre is what they call LFENCE, places sensitive code in waiting area until its security checks are executed, and only then is the sensitive code allowed to execute. This is according to Ashish Venkat, an assistant professor at the University of Virginia and one of the co-authors of the study. Intel and its guidelines for countering timing attacks against cryptographic implementation recommends adhering to constant time programming principles, a practice that's easier really said than done here. So here's the thing. We're going to have these vulnerabilities, and now you've got to start measuring, is it going to impact every single device in my environment or not? And at this point, the risk is absolutely real. The impact could be devastating, and the mitigation isn't as easy as it should be. So one, look at how do you start approaching this from a classified level down to like public. So almost look at your executives where the crown jewels are, start looking at what kind of defenses you can put on those devices and how you can limit those devices being used by threat actors in order to gain access to information they have no right to, and then go down the list. We'll probably do brainstorming sessions on my team for the next 2-3 days, thinking of different ways. I don't know that I always have the answers for this kind of stuff, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Spectre's back, and it's bound to keep us all busy in the foreseeable future. DoD is expanding its vulnerability disclosure program to web-facing targets, the program that's been running on HackerOne since 2016. When the DoD's Hack the Pentagon initiative was launched, is now expanding its scope, and you can actually go and do public-facing stuff as well. So great move by the DoD program. Go to HackerOne, sign up if you're a vulnerability person, or if you're a red teamer, blue teamer, or purple teamer. Go there and have a good time with their vulnerability disclosure program. Or if you're a researcher, go have a great time. And our final story for the day before we break for the week, folks, is the state's pushback against the use of facial recognition by police. Law enforcement agencies across the U.S. have used facial recognition to solve homicides, bust human trafficking, and there are some advantages to it. But there's also been fears of the technology over civil rights violation, racial bias, invasion of privacy, and accuracy. Accuracy is a big one. And we've also talked about this on the Tech Town Square. The ACLU began raising questions about the technology years ago. In March, the ACLU sued Clearview AI, a company that provides facial recognition services to law enforcement and private companies, contending it illegally stockpiled images of 3 billion people scraped from the internet sites without their knowledge or permission. Again, this is going to be very, very interesting as the future of biometrics, not only from a law enforcement perspective, but also from a corporate perspective, is going to be something that's really going to be front and center for the next few years. So you want to keep an eye out for that as well. Folks, that's it for us here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you for everyone watching and commenting throughout the show. If I didn't get to your comments, I do apologize. I'm trying to keep these under 15 minutes. I'm working really, really hard to try to keep these in the 10 to 13, 14-minute range. Tomorrow, I'll have a great tech corner with Juan Rodriguez, the CEO over at Wistic. We talk a little bit about how he got started in engineering and kind of some of the stuff that he dealt with as an engineer to founding and being the CTO of Wistic. And we'll talk a little bit about vendor risk management as well. You'll want to miss that. I'll also be doing a live tomorrow at some point. I don't know when yet. My schedule's pretty loaded tomorrow, but I'm going to try and jump on a live tomorrow to talk about the MITRE attack and version 9 and what does it really mean. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. If you are not following me on LinkedIn, go to James J. Azar or go to our YouTube page, CyberHub Podcast. Subscribe and turn on the notifications there. You'll know every time I go live on YouTube. So make sure you check that out. Also, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll also be able to do that as well. Folks, let's stay cyber safe today. Let's stay healthy. So, go take care of business. Thursday, tomorrow's Friday, last day of the week. We'll have a great one. This has been an awesome week. Thank you, everyone, so much for everything that you do to help support and propel our community and our organizations and our nation to be a cybersecurity conscious and safe place. We know we still have a lot of work to do, but nonetheless, it's because of people like you that we're able to continue to do it. So all of you out there that do this, thank you so much. I'll be back on Monday with another one tomorrow at Tech Corner, and I'll be doing a live. Stay tuned. Till then, guys, stay cyber safe. Take care. Cheers.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.